Hey, Devil's Digest fans, Zach Keenan here alongside publisher Hode Rubino previewing the 2020 edition of the Territorial Cup, the Sun Devils and the Wildcats this Friday night in Tucson. Hode, as we get into our preview here, we look at a season where the Sun Devils may have been affected more than any other team in the Pac-12 by the pandemic after missing all these games so far this season. And believe it or not, we're actually more or less halfway through this season. So as we go past these two games, an 0-2 start for the Sun Devils, what have you seen in this Arizona State squad so far this year?
Well, Zach, as unpredictable these times have been, not only on the field but also off the field, I think that a lot of aspects of this ASU team did pan out the way we expected them to. Let's start with the defense. We knew it was going to be a very strong defensive unit coming into the 2020 season, and if there was any question mark on it, it was a defensive line. Full confession, I was definitely one of those beat writers that thought that the defensive line was a big issue that needed to solve itself pretty fast for Arizona State to have success. Even an 0-2 record, you have to really tip your hat off to this defensive line, really playing exceptionally well. The games against USC and UCLA were losses and all, were definitely not games where you could point to the defensive line being such a huge Achilles heel that really impacted the entire defense. So I think that really did come to fruition as we all expected in the preseason. When you look at the offense, there definitely were question marks as far as the very, very young skill players and how would that affect the play of Jaden Daniels. Sadly for the Sun Devils, I think that theory really has played itself out. This offense for Arizona State after two games is much more one-dimensional than probably a lot of us thought it would be. I definitely like what I saw from the running game. I wouldn't put him at the same level of surprise as the defensive line, but I think that nonetheless, it is definitely one of the more encouraging aspects of this team. Chip Trainum, Rashad Wright, one of the best 1-2 punches in the Pac-12, bar none. Even after two games, I think I'm comfortable enough to say that. It's just, again, going back to the passing game, you have just a lot of young wide receivers that are learning a scheme that's very complex. Then you have returning wide receivers really needing to do almost a 180 in their approach, trying to hone down this scheme. And I also think that Jaden Daniels is really having a string of games right now dating back to the last two contests against U of A and Florida State last year. In the games against LA schools, he's really not playing at the level we expected him to see. I mean, it seems like that Oregon game we had a career outing. It seems like a million years ago, and that's definitely what Jaden Daniels can do, and I'm confident that he can still show that. The question is, can he show it this year or show it next year? But more importantly, those wide receivers around him really do have to step up. So that's one aspect that was probably somewhat predictable in an adverse way for Arizona State. But overall, I don't think we have to be deeply disappointed with the talent level and the more than one or two flashes we've seen from ASU. But an 0-2 record is no 0-2 record, and everybody ultimately is judged by that. And that's why I'm sure there's more disappointment than encouragement among the Sun Devil fans.
So not an issue of lackadaisical effort on the Sun Devil team, but unique circumstances. I mean, this is a team that has lost so much contact time that other teams have had an abundance of in reality. So as we look at our preview, we'll start with the University of Arizona Wildcats offense, and to be honest, we really don't know who's starting at quarterback. Is it starter Grant Gunnell or backup Will Plummer? But whatever your opinion on that, Hode, looking at the Wildcats' offensive play style, does it really matter who starts under center?
In some respects, Zach, it doesn't matter because I feel that much like Arizona State, their ground attack, I'm not going to say light years ahead of their passing attack, but definitely significantly better. So in that sense, maybe it doesn't matter that much if it's Gunnell or if it's Plummer. Now, obviously, they're very two different quarterbacks. Gunnell is definitely more of the pocket passer, and much like Jaden Daniels and the issues as he's facing here with his wide receivers, the Arizona wide receivers really have had a hard time getting open consistently. The offensive line play, again, much like Arizona State, has been very shaky at times in terms of pass protection. I believe the Arizona offensive line has given up 33 sacks even in 4 games. That is just an astronomical number. So that's definitely an opportunity for the Arizona State front seven to really put a lot of pressure on whomever the quarterback is. Now, if it's going to be Will Plummer, I'm not saying we're going to see Dorian Thompson-Robinson Part 2, just like we saw with the UCLA quarterback last Saturday, but Plummer is definitely a better runner than Gunnell, and I think some of the elements that the ASU defense used against UCLA, trying to contain DTR and his running, definitely would have to be employed against Will Plummer too. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But when you put on film of the Arizona offense, one player, and maybe even one player only, just really sticks out the most. Running back Gary Brightwell maybe doesn't have gaudy stats when you look at average per game, and it's definitely an Arizona offense that played much better the first two contests than the last 2 weeks. But Arizona as a team is averaging 161 yards on the ground. So it is beyond a no-brainer what Arizona State and any other team facing Arizona this year has to do first and foremost. Obviously, that's always easier said than done. And if we're being honest about it, even though this ASU defense has definitely played pretty well, maybe even quite well, I would say, stopping the ground attack hasn't been something to be consistently doing well. And I think especially against UCLA, when you look at the game film and look at the stats, I think UCLA's ground attack definitely did hurt Arizona State more than its passing game. So you have to make sure that if you're ASU that doesn't happen again. And I definitely feel that the ASU defense is much better than the Arizona offense, but ultimately they definitely have to show this on Friday night. And playing against a team that doesn't have even half the talent as a USC or UCLA, in my matter, this is definitely what the doctor ordered for a team trying to get its first win of the year.
Gary Brightwell averaging 5 yards per carry, not crazy stats as far as touchdowns, yards per game, as he does only have about 1 or 2 touchdowns in the season this year, but that 5 yards per carry. Co-defensive coordinator Antonio Pierce said earlier this week that if they thought Demetric Felton of UCLA was bad, well, then take a look at this guy, Gary Brightwell. Let's take a look at the University of Arizona defense. Both teams are winless this year, both Arizona State and U of A, but U of A has double the amount of losses that ASU has. ASU at 0-2, U of A at 0-4. Is that an indictment of this team's defense, Hode?
Yeah, I definitely think it is. Sure, you can look at the level of opponent, and maybe giving up 34 points to a team like USC. There's probably not a lot of shame in that, even though ASU did give up less points. But it's an Arizona defense that anybody who has followed the team even casually knows that they lost a lot of talent to the transfer portal, opt out, whatever avenue you want to call it. And when you look at their averages, they're definitely not pretty. They are giving up 189 yards on the ground and in the air just under 290 yards. Those are definitely not recipes for success in such a potent conference such as the Pac-12. On the other hand, you do have to keep in mind that they were able to register 13 sacks, which after 4 games, that is definitely a respectable number. And we saw a team in UCLA that played here in Sun Devil Stadium that also came in as being very proficient in sacking the quarterback, and it really showed with 5 sacks last Saturday. And I definitely feel that University of Arizona is going to take a page off of UCLA's defensive playbook and say, look, if we can pressure Jaden Daniels early and often, we know that offensive line has not shown to be a savant pass protection unit. We know that the wide receivers, especially in those hot routes, when you do bring 5-6 defensive players after Jaden Daniels, is not really making Jaden Daniels' life easier, is not really being open and really making something out of nothing. So I think Arizona State, the burden of proof is definitely on them, that their passing attack, especially in pressure situations, really has to step up. And you just hope that UCLA game, as painful as it was at times for that ASU offense, especially in those situations I just mentioned, is definitely going to be a very valuable learning tool that they can implement tomorrow. And another thing that's beyond a no-brainer is that ASU has to run the ball a lot. I know that was one big complaint that I saw and heard from fans after the UCLA game, that ASU was trying to pass the ball way too often in the first half. I think just in the first half alone, there are probably 3 or 4 first down situations where ASU was trying to pass the ball. I'm definitely not oblivious to the fact that this offense has to be more balanced, and I said last week, and I'll say it again, that a one-dimensional ASU offense really puts them in a tough position, really puts that much pressure on an ASU defense, which in the 2 games to date, and you can talk about maybe not being a huge body of work, but are holding the fort, if you will, as much as they can throughout the first three quarters. In the fourth quarter, when they're just not getting that support from the ASU offense, when ASU has just empty possessions, then that defense finally reaches its break point, and you have to make sure that does not happen against U of A. Again, the caliber of defense you're facing is nothing like USC and UCLA, but there are definitely some cracks in the armor for Arizona State. So Chip Trayanum, Rashad White definitely have to have a big night on Friday, but they also have to fed the ball more often than not in the first half. Really loosen up that U of A defense, which really have no reason at all not to stack the box like UCLA did, and not put pressure on an offensive line and on wide receivers for that matter that are not always handling effectively blitz situations.
And like any great rivalry in college football, the Territorial Cup is no exception. We expect the unexpected, and this year, I imagine, as all things have been in 2020, will be absolutely no different. But Hode, will pivot to the part that all of our viewers wait for. We know and we can expect that one of these two teams will register their first win of the 2020 season. In your opinion, Hode, who's it going to be?
I think when people talk about the Territorial Cup or just rivalry games in general, they look so much at the history and what happened in the last 5 years and 10 years. And the reason for my prediction is not going to be the history, because the history is on ASU's side. Winners of the last three and winning 4 games in a row, having seniors at Arizona State, never losing to U of A over their career is definitely the exception. It's not the norm. ASU has won 7 out of the last 10. So that is not the reason for my prediction. I'm just strictly looking at just talent versus talent. I don't think it would be too harsh to say that even though the talent level on the ASU offense is greater than that of the U of A offense, that really hasn't manifested itself. I mean, a winless record is a winless record, and as I pointed to earlier in my preview, there are a lot of issues on both offenses that really have not been solved. And yes, U of A had more time to solve them and still didn't. But ASU's issues, I don't think should not be overlooked. There's a big burden of proof on them. Again, not to belabor the point, but the passing game, handling blitz situations, that's something I still waiting for Arizona State to do effectively. And again, U of A, with all the issues on defense, is not a team that is really lacking in being able to generate pressure, being able to generate sacks. So that's one thing to look at. So offenses, I think, pretty even. But defenses, and I know I've said this last week, maybe even maybe 4 weeks before against USC, this is still one of the better defenses in the Pac-12, a defense that I would definitely put top 3 in the conference, even after 2 games. And looking at the offense they're going to face, which is going to be nowhere close to the talent level of the 2 LA schools, I definitely feel that this ASU defense can impose their will on U of A and probably do it more effectively because of the talent level that's going to be on the other side of the ball. I don't think this is going to be a game where the scoreboard is going to be lit up, because again, I just think both offenses really have way too many issues to go out there and score 30, 35 points. And I think the defenses, each in their own right, are maybe not the type of defenses to give up that many points on a consistent basis. So it's going to be a close one. It's going to be a crazy one. Maybe that's the predictable part of a Territorial Cup, but I'm predicting a ASU win 24-20.
24-20, Arizona State. For our prediction for DevilsDigest.com, I'm Zach Keenan, our publisher, Hode Rubino, joining us for all your pre, during, and post-game coverage. Make sure you keep it locked in to DevilsDigest.com and give us a follow on Twitter at DevilsDigest. The Sun Devils and the Wildcats. Boy, when was the last time that these two teams had a winless Territorial Cup matchup? We'll see who comes out the victor this Friday night, 5 p.m. in Tucson.